Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you are well. We have a fantastic session again ahead. We will get to know how TikTok fakes accounts pushed Russian lives to millions. So, quoting TikTok's slogan, let's make every second count. And with your permission, let me just number a few housekeeping rules. As you might have noticed, this session is being recorded and the replay will be available on EU DisinfoLab YouTube channel either tomorrow or in a couple of days. We are going to use the tool Slido during the Q&A. You can already start connecting to Slido by scanning the QR code that you see on your screen or at slido.com and using the password #disinfo. And just to get started and get acquainted with the tool, please, would you let us know where are you joining us from today? Participants are typing. Let's give it a couple of seconds more. UK, Lisbon, Surrey, Utrecht, London. Thank you very much. Thank you. I have another question. Would you let us know who you are? Which sector do you represent? In the meantime, let me introduce myself. I'm Ana Romero Vicente. I'm a researcher at EU DisinfoLab, and I am delighted to welcome you today to one of the EU DisinfoLab webinars. We are at EU DisinfoLab planning to have a series of online meetings that we have designed for the counter-disinformation community to meet, to listen firsthand to investigations, case studies. These are webinars for any kind of responses to disinformation, so your ideas on what topics to cover in these webinars are very welcome. We are hosting these webinars regularly, either on Tuesdays or on Thursdays afternoons. And how many people? We have so far 50 people in the room. Thank you very much. Welcome. I believe we will have a couple of few more people. Maria, if you can update me on that. So today's webinar is called Massive Russian Influence Operation on TikTok and Beyond. And our guest is Roman Osadchuk, Research Associate for the Eurasia region at the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab. Welcome, Roman. You can jump on the stage and thanks. Your research focuses on disinformation in Ukraine and neighboring countries. You are author of multiple investigations, uncovered the tactics and techniques of malign actors and reports in disinformation, influence campaigns, and computational propaganda. So today, Roman, we are learning about a Russian propaganda campaign involving thousands of fake accounts on TikTok, spreading disinformation about the war in Ukraine. The investigation was published last December. It was run by DFRLab and BBC Verify. We will listen to you for around 30-35 minutes, Roman. Then we will have 20 minutes, 25 for Q&A. And as I mentioned, the Q&A will happen through Slido, so do not disconnect your device from Slido. Maybe we can have it on, yeah, we have it on the screen already, the code again. So let's go. We have 52 people in the room. You are Roman, co-host, and you are able now to share your screen. The floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Anna, for kind introduction. Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here and share with you our research. So let me just share the screen. Now you could see the slides. Yeah, so let's jump straight into this thing. So major Russian online influence operation on TikTok and beyond. So Anna already introduced me. Here I am. You could see that the person on this image and the person on the camera kind of the same, so that's all good. There is no forgery or disinfo there. I'm indeed Eurasia Research Associate at the DFRLab. Here is my Twitter/X credentials and a website where you could read the fantastic materials written by my colleagues and myself. We recently published one report, but I will mention it in the end of our today's presentation. So let's go into this campaign and this particular investigation. So, okay. First of all, technology kind of betrayed us here, but okay, nevertheless. So the whole campaign started from and how I actually found it. I've seen a Twitter user sharing an information that supposedly Ukrainian, now former Minister of Defense, but at the time he was a Minister of Defense, Alexei Reznikov, that he bought a fantastic villa for his daughter somewhere in French Riviera or something. It costs certain amount of millions of euros, and yeah, that's a fantastic property, and this is really bad. So why am I saying that technology failed us is because I mixed up the different animations, so that's why you cannot see the main post, but we'll get back to it. So basically, it just tells that Ukraine defense minister did that. And then quite a few days later, this actual thing happened. So there was a disclaimer and community note that this is actually disinformation, right? Because this property is still being on sale and you could still buy it if you want. So he didn't buy it as well. So when I've seen this publication, it interested me. I started an investigation. I also found all of this like advertisements for this property. I also kind of found out what kind of images they used and how it looked like. So the source of this wonderful video was a TikTok, which is at the moment was not that, and still it's like somewhat exotic, I would say, as a source of the video. So I went to this source, and here is our wonderful source. It is the account Vladislav Yashchenko, which is like pretty. It kind of sounds like Ukrainian name, like combination of name and family name. So he followed no one, but had a certain amount of followers, like 3,700, almost 38. Received 52,000 likes, which is quite significant again, and had only one single video with, at the moment of this archival process, 1.8 million views. So again, just to clarify one thing, if we get back to the one slide, so on Twitter, it received at the moment 3 million views, which is a lot, but also on the origin, it received somewhat similar numbers, this particular video. The account, as I said, was empty, only this one video was there. Comments to this video seemed pretty authentic and from real people. So when you click on those people and see what they're doing, posting, etc., they were real users. But everything else wasn't that authentic, especially with this account. So let's just make a deep dive into this thing. So this is the source video, but unfortunately, I'll just quickly click on that through that so that you would see. So here are the pictures of this minister and his daughter, and this is a supposed property that he bought for 7 million euros. Yeah, I'll just click on it. Here's him again, and some criticism that he is a bad person, and our supposedly Ukrainian government is bad and corrupt, and they are all the same. They are pretty bad. You should not trust them. So this is the main message of this particular video, but also it's not only this video. There's a whole wave and a whole campaign behind it that we will actually take a look at in a second. So what importantly happened here is that I'll just launch it and I'll show you. So you could see here is like powered by easydubs.ai. So basically what people done after it was initially published on X, a lot of people like send it through the bot or like through the program just to narrate it in English, and then it just exploded. So like millions more people seen it because it was originally on Ukrainian, mostly focused on Ukrainian audience. But as you could imagine, when it was translated in English, millions of more potential viewers were added to the pool of potential target audience, and it received an enormous sharing. So I started looking into this campaign and found out that multiple similar things, but let's just go into this video once again. So here is the publication of it. There is profile picture. It's actually stock photograph that's been stolen from one of the websites, Alamy or like Adobe Stock. Adobe Stock. And also the property, as I said, if you go into it, it could be easily found. And even if you look closer into this image, it's written Christie's there. So basically, it's the place where you could buy this property if you're a millionaire, because it indeed costs a few millions of euros, which is quite significant. Yeah, so this were like the initial leads there. But what was also interesting is that it was not the only video. The first video that happened mentioning Reznikov was published a few days before that. And it did not receive millions of views, but it was like the first kind of, I don't know, trial attacking Minister of Defense himself. It was from an account Andrea Miller 421. Profile picture of this person was actually stolen. Chris Evans picture, American actor, and also it was featuring another allied house that supposedly daughter of the minister bought through some offshore company, EGT. So neither the search through Google for this specific company and also reverse search for this specific image revealed that the images for this property were actually featured on some design websites, but no information about it being on sale or somebody bought it. So it was again disinfo. And again, what is really interesting here is hashtags. We'll get back to it slightly later, but please take a short notice. If you read Ukrainian or Cyrillic, then you could probably read it through. But if not, do not worry, I get you covered. So here is hashtag Ukraine in Russian, hashtag Reznikov, so the last name of the minister in Ukrainian, hashtag Minsk, again in Ukrainian, hashtag Kiev, which is written in Russian manner, but with a mistake. So it's like quite particular hashtag. Usually people are not writing it like that. Hashtag front, like the front line, but the front. Hashtag mobilization in Ukrainian. Hashtag occupation in Ukrainian. Hashtag recommendations, but instead of fully Ukrainian letters and characters used, there is MI in the middle are used. It's Latin letters. So this is somewhat odd, but again, pretty specific and particular hashtag out there. All right, and yet another video that attacked Minister of Defense. Again, the picture was stolen from some art web page. It was another villa, but the offshore through which it was bought is the same. Again, you could find this property, I don't know, and buy it if you want. This one in particular received 405,000 views and quite a bunch of shares, likes, and comments. Hashtags here are somewhat similar. So it's again Reznikov in Ukrainian, money in Ukrainian, Russia in Ukrainian language. War, but wrongly spelled in Ukrainian, mobilization in Ukrainian, front again, Zelensky with Ukrainian flag, Minsk in Ukrainian, again, wrong spelling of Kiev, and Zelia, which is like shortened and denigrated name for President Zelensky. All right. So that's basically, there was a wave of different videos and stories aiming at Minister of Defense, claiming that his family bought this fantastic mansion. And in these three videos, there were like three different properties out there. Another video that was somewhat viral, again, so just showing the whole scale of it, is that there was this wonderful car. It doesn't seem that way, but this car is made from the pure gold. It contains of multiple kilos of pure gold. So again, the same kind of idea that he bought this fantastic car when people are suffering. But the images were taken from photo shoot of this car. This is extremely particular car. It's like one of a kind. And it was bought like 10-ish years ago or even more. So this video received more than 1.5 million views on TikTok itself, but then it was spread to other parts of the web as well, notably X and some others. Again, profile picture of the account was stolen from one illustrator. Personally, even if you reversely search the image, you could find this image, and there would be an Instagram handle of this person who made this picture, right? All right, so let's go into structure of the video. So usually it went something like that. Photo of an official, like in this case, again, Reznikov. Some luxurious item. So he bought this fantastic Mercedes-Benz specific liquor, something design, whatever. And in the end, it's usually a mention that all government is like this, or ordinary people suffering. And showing the pictures of Ukrainians, I don't know, in some protests, or like some old grannies, or yeah, so some not that great imagery of what is happening and how it looks like in Ukraine. What is notable about this campaign, it was not only aimed at the central government, it was not only aimed at the Minister of Defense. Other targets were President Zelensky, local mayors, heads of draft offices, and many, many more local officials. So the whole scale of it was enormous, because it was more than 11,000 different accounts and videos that actually discuss it, that the Ukrainian leadership is corrupted in one way or another. So use of the same hashtags was pretty notable, as I already said. So this, the first example, it was, again, this time they used Ukraine, Russia in Ukrainian, Zaluzhny, ex-commander-in-chief, Amerik, which is like American, but stopped at Amerik. News in Russian, Bakhmut, and 3 Ukrainian flags, and again, Kiev spelled wrong. In the next one, again, Kiev spelled wrong, and some other hashtags. Some of these hashtags are quite popular, so they try to actually engage into more views by showing it to more people that are searching by hashtags or clicking on them. So maybe it worked out for them initially, and it actually helped us to identify more videos like that. What is another important point here, and to talk about, is that videos actually went to other platforms. So it never were only TikTok problem on itself. It was actually quite bigger problem, because those videos, they went and migrated to some other platforms like X, BitChute, Reddit, maybe something else, because we in this investigation, we found that bloggers on YouTube mentioned sources from TikTok that said that the minister bought a villa. Also, it was mentioned by Telegram and some other places. So these videos reach out pretty wide, and not always users of the TikTok in particular, right? So it went outside of the initial platform and spread on multiple platforms. So here is this the users of the post that you did not see on the first slide. So this how it looked like, right? So the Alexei Reznikov is said to have a net worth of 1 million, and how supposedly he could have been bought this villa and where the money is going. So let's think about it, and like this conspiratorial thinking without the fact check of the initial claim and that this is wrong. And as I said, so on Twitter, it received more than 2.3 million views, 1.2 thousand bookmarks, and many more retweets, likes, etc. So it was quite popular video. Then, of course, community notes appeared, but even now there are multiple instances of the same video without the community notes. So other languages. This is not a video, but this is a translation in French about this episode. So this is screenshots of this TikTok video and some commentary in French that actually daughter of the Minister of Defense bought this fantastic villa for 7 million euros. And some quote from Ilya Kiva. And here it is suggested that he is ex-neo-Nazi from Ukraine. Basically, this guy fled to Russia. He was a traitor. He was tried in Ukraine in absentia, and then recently he was killed in Russia. So very trustworthy source to mention. And here is another publication on Twitter, but this time it's in Dutch language. I used Google Translate for those who are not speaking Dutch. So in this case, again, so the tax dollars are going to Ukraine, and look how these people supposedly spend those money. Again, it is absolutely false because they're referring to the same video. And as I said, it would be quite easily fact checked with like reverse image search in like, I don't know, in a minute or two. So it's not that extremely complicated. So then BBC Verify reached out to us, and we started like working together on this case. So we mostly focused on attack against Minister of Defense because it was the most widespread and the most popular within this campaign, receiving millions of views. But BBC Verify collected more than 800 cases in multiple languages. So it was not only in Ukrainian, there were cases in Russian, French, German, etc. So it was quite an extensive data set. And by looking into it and just like trying different techniques, we were able to uncover even bigger networks. So even this 800 were just a fraction of what actually happened. And then TikTok in their press release said that it's actually more than 11,000 of different accounts were participating in this particular campaign. So we found like less than 10% of it. So the sheer volume was enormous. And just imagine that those videos could be easily translated by any user into any other language. So the language barrier kind of loses its sense in our time, because anybody could just like, specifically at Twitter, tweet at some specific bot and it will translate, or add subs or something else. So videos, as I said before, targeted political and military leadership, mayors and local officials, so mayors of small and bigger towns, officers like of the draft of the draft commissions. But what is interesting is that the scale is somewhat different, right? So they try to made it somewhat realistic. So for instance, for the Minister of Defense, there was a villa that cost like multiple millions, or for President Zelensky, it was some yachts, I don't know, for multiple millions. But for local draft officer, they claim that he bought an apartment in Lviv. Again, this apartment is for sale, so it's like false, right? So this is the plain disinfo. As I said, they use similar hashtags, stolen profile pictures, and content out there. So let's take a look at the common characteristics, what we've spotted with the BBC Verify team and ourselves. So same scenario, as I said, right? So here's an official, he is bad, he or she bought this, Ukrainian people are suffering, Ukraine is fighting, or the whole leadership is bad, and look at what your what leadership of Ukraine is doing with money. So for the foreigners, the scope was that like, hey, you're helping Ukraine, Ukraine is corrupt, you should stop it. So this is the main message. And for Ukrainians is that look at your leadership, they are not trustworthy. You should not, I know, believe them, trust them. You should, basically in a nutshell, you should stop resisting Russia. That's the main kind of like push and nudge in this thing. AI narration. This is extremely important because in multiple times, probably if there was a text in, let's say, Ukrainian and there are like Russian speaking person would be narrating it, we would be probably able to identify that. But this time they use this classic like TikTok voice, and it is impossible to clarify whether it's like who is behind this basic operation, because again, AI narration does not have like any type of accent except of robo voice, right? Because it's literally a robot. Hijacking existing hashtags. As I said, they try to use some popular hashtags, but also they participated in some more niche ones as well. The scale was enormous, so they tried to flood the information space with multiple instances. So as I said, like with Reznikov, there was 3 villas, 1 car, and maybe even something else that we didn't find. So for multiple officials, there were like multiple versions of what they bought just to throw as much as they could, so that in hope that something would stick and people will pick this up, as actually happened with Reznikov and this French villa. They used regular names, like of people who might live in Ukraine. So it's like normal combination of name and first name and last name. Sometimes they were like exotic names, but most of the times they were like normal, and the bios as well. So let's again take a look at the bios, right? So here is the bio of Zoya Artemenko account that criticized the now Commander-in-Chief Syrsky. And here is Oksana Koval, and she actually shared the video about Zelensky. So what is interesting is that they share the same bio on their accounts. So it is in Ukrainian "Шукаю щастя, тільки шкода, що його немає в Google", which is translated into "I'm searching for the happiness, but unfortunately it cannot be found on Google." So they copied like character to character these both things, and literally multiple of them used the same bio. Some of them were with no bio at all, but a lot of them were with something, usually just like some aphorisms or some like, I don't know, internet phrases that even regular users used. But by that lead, you could also find this another participant, because again, participants like participating accounts in this campaign, because they were like, again, empty accounts, single video, stolen profile pictures, and these bios. Another common characteristic is the use of Russian imagery. So one of the videos, again, a pretty interesting phrase that multiple accounts used in bio. But here is a video about struggling Ukrainian soldiers, and it shared the imagery. So this is an infographic from Politpuzzle. It's like pro-Kremlin outlet, and you cannot find this specific image elsewhere. So it was like copied from some Russian sources that are being pro-Kremlin, right? So somebody who searched for the imagery for these videos picked up this picture among, I don't know, millions of others, let's say. Another interesting thing is this one. So here's an account of another account, Galabukin. Again, here is a video about soldiers, how they're struggling because it's hard thing to do, and how they're in the mud, but they are protecting us, and they are buying some equipment, and the government wrongs them. But the problem is that this picture is actually from Chechen wars. So it's literally like Russian soldiers, but it pretends to be that these are Ukrainian soldiers, which is like, again, seems that the person who picked up the pictures for that did not care much about imagery that he or she used before launching it on multiple people. Another interesting thing is like some inconsistencies. So like this account, the bio was in Ukrainian, but then the video was in Russian. So it seems like there is some mismatch. It was a rare thing, but sometimes it happened. And it was another interesting thing. So maybe there was some automation behind it while publishing, and there might be some mistakes in that. Another thing is the Russian origin that was somewhat confirmed, surprisingly, by Washington Post, that published an article like 2 weeks ago, maybe slightly more. They published leaked or like intercepted internal Russian documents about some particular campaigns, and in one of these screenshots of these reports, that like internal Russian reports, one of the videos from TikTok that I actually seen personally, it was about military like draft officer on AMG. It is called AMG. It's like I don't know, some great and expensive car. So basically, they portrayed this as they disseminated this video, which somewhat confirmed that it was Russian operation. I mean, TikTok also confirmed it because it was, they said that there was enormous OPSEC measures taken to avoid any identification, but TikTok was able to confirm that it was Russian operation. And now, finally, before we're concluding, a few quick words about the report that we published. So last year, in 2023, we published the first undermining Ukraine. It's basically an analysis of Kremlin operations in Ukraine, Russia, and worldwide to kind of undermine the image of Ukraine and trying to damage aid to Ukraine, Ukrainian image, and Ukraine will to resist. And a few days ago, like last week, we published the second iteration of it. So I encourage you to read this if you're interested. Again, this is the wild scale, so where we analyze not only Russia and Ukraine, but also operations in Europe, in African countries, in MENA region, but also in Latin America. So I encourage you to read this. And a few points from this report. So the new platforms that we spotted, so like this TikTok campaign is described in this report, but also that in Ukraine, Russians targeted social cohesion, and instead of like claiming some wider ideas and wider approaches, they narrowed their tactics. They tried to monitor what's happening in Ukraine and try to use it in their advantage. So like amplify the problems, issues, and conflicts within the country. So they like the scope changed. There is an alternative ecosystem on X. So by that, I mean, there are some accounts, usually with blue ribbons, that amplify some pro-Kremlin content. And as we've seen with this like TikToks, and they allow it to be seen by millions of users out there, and it helps Russian disinfo to spread even in places where like usual outlets like RT and Sputnik are not being available, like in the European Union. Doppelganger campaign, you're well aware with this thing, but it is ongoing. It still goes on in Ukraine daily. I see the ads myself. It is here, still with us. It continues. It didn't stop, and probably it will continue even further because probably it gives some results and numbers, and they did not stop it yet. All right, so if you want to read more, please go and check the report. And on that, I'll thank you for your attention. I would be more than happy to answer your questions. I think we are about at this like 35 minutes mark, so it should be just right in time.
Yes, thank you, Roman, for this extensive presentation, including the bonus on the last DFRLab report undermining Ukraine, recently released. I thoroughly invite you to read all, so to get to know what changed in Russian information operations around the world during last year. So, Roman, let's keep sharing your insights with the community. We are 66 people in the room. I'm very happy to open the Q&A session. Before that, let's share again the code. QR code of Slido, it's on the screen. It's the tool we are using to post questions. And we have around 20-25 minutes left for the Q&A. So let's go. I'm happy to see that we already have a few questions. Roman, how did you find the 800 cases? Was it a manual search or with specific hashtags?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So it is a combination. Basically, it is a hashtag search. So it is manual. Like, unfortunately, it is manual labor. Because there are no like great tools, right, to search content. So yeah, it was hashtags. It was the use of some keywords. But then when the some initial data set was taken, we used also the bios you could use to search more accounts. So yeah, different techniques, so like manual search. But at the same time, colleagues from BBC Verify said that they got like the platform showed them additional content when they just scrolled for you kind of tab on the app, because it was like the topics were somewhat similar, and that's how they were able to spot more. But literally you could just like search any of the hashtags, so it was mostly through the hashtags, unfortunately.
Uh, is there there is another question somehow related. Is there any data or metric by which you can gauge the impact of these disinformation campaigns?
I guess the impact is the second toughest question after the attribution to specific people that like many people ask like us and researchers. Unfortunately, no. Except of like seeing how many engagements it received, like the views, shares, comments, likes, we cannot tell. But because it was like republic, like it was published multiple times on multiple languages, we could assume that many people actually read it. We do not know whether it impacted their like thinking, whether it impacted their communication with their like politicians, like and government, whether they need to provide aid to Ukraine. I cannot tell you the exact number or the percentage. We could take a look at what Russians measure in this like Washington Post article, and like how they measure the success, but they again use the same metrics. They use like the usual thing that you could measure, and usually it is engagements, but it is a pretty poor predictor of whether it impacted the audience or not. So that's why it's somewhat problematic.
We have another question. Do you think Roman online platforms are doing enough to combat this? Do you work closely with them?
Uh, so the problem, it's not only with the platforms, I would say. I mean, platforms could do more, that's for sure. They could, I don't know. There are some specific and interesting cases of how you could work with that. So, for instance, at Facebook ad library, sometimes these things that get that got taken down ads, you could still see them and analyze them, which is like quite useful. So if like other platforms were done the same, instead of just deleting the content, it would be great for other researchers to take a look at this platform, see some different TTPs maybe, and kind of analyze for future. So there's always a room to do more for the platforms, but this is not only the problem of the platforms per se, it's rather problem is hidden in maybe like media literacy or something. It's much more tougher to ensure that people would be, I don't know, checking the information that they read. I know, reversibly search the images that they were being shown, or like videos, just pausing them and searching this villa, whether it's for sale or not, right? If we're taking this particular video. So platforms are doing a few things, some of them great. Like sometimes there is some disclaimers. Community notes in itself is like interesting tool that sometimes might work in interesting ways, but there is always room to do more. Regarding whether we work closely with them, no, we're doing research. We are just showing what's happening there, and trying to get them like to react. So like we were telling them what we found. So like do something with this. So I wouldn't say that like we're working with them together or something pretty tight or something like this.
Roman, another participant is saying related to the platforms, did you or will you have access to the TikTok API for research like this?
Oh no, no, manual research, only hardcore, the samurai way, the hard one. No, no TikTok API, no. Unfortunately though, because it could have been automated at least in some way, but no. TikTok APIs. If I see the same related question, I could answer that. So I guess the TikTok research API, I might be mistaken, but it's only for the academics, and like we are not academia, DFRLab is not, so that's why we are not having an access to it. So unfortunately, like we didn't have an access for it. Is the code on the successful limited info? I need to check on that about the code of practice. I cannot answer it right now. Whether it's successful limiting disinformation. Because honestly, disinformation is quite a big problem. It has many facets, and while some things work, some others might definitely not. There is always like hide and seek game in a way. So the people who are spreading disinfo trying to avoid any measures taken by defensive kind of forces, fact-checking organizations, platforms, etc. So I cannot fully answer this.
Yeah. We have another question related to platforms. This is an interesting one. What differences have you seen between techniques or reach on TikTok and other platforms? I'm wondering, given TikTok's unique and advanced algorithm.
Numbers. I think the numbers and the easiness of this video is receiving like enormous popularity. Like I would say that like just to imagine that some video, let's say on YouTube from obscurity receives a few million views is, I mean, it is possible, don't get me wrong, but it is somewhat hard. And this kind of like the algorithm and also the format, right? So the short video, which tries to show you like the research and some evidence and some interesting information that is supposedly being researched when in reality it wasn't, and it's actually disinfo. And also when it is actually within some entertainment content that you're consuming. This is kind of alluring and making it pretty effective. I cannot tell you whether the same things, if they attempted doing it on other platforms, would be similarly widespread or not. Because again, you need to test that, right? Assumption. It's just an assumption, but it is what it is. Some of the videos received millions of views or hundreds of thousands of views. I showed you a few screenshots, so it's like 450,000, 300 something thousand, million plus, 2 million plus, and then on other platforms as well. So I would say that definitely algorithm helped here with the dissemination, and also some users started stitching with it, so it even allowed it to make it spread even further, right? So there are a lot of things and different tools within TikTok that help it to be more widespread than it could have been otherwise.
Yeah, that's interesting, Roman. For the next question, I think it's very linked to the last report under many Ukraine, where it shows, let's say in one paper, how the Kremlin disinformation war hasn't been limited to the West or to the South Caucasus, but that over last year, Russia has used information operations to undermine Ukraine in Latin America, Africa, in the Middle East. So this participant is asking, to what extent was the migration to information environments outside the West, such as Africa states?
I wouldn't say that they migrated fully. They are still present everywhere. That's the thing, right? It's not only in a particular region. It happens simultaneously in multiple regions. The thing and what actually different is the approaches. So when in European Union, RT and Sputnik are not functional anymore, they needed to find some additional ways to reach out to people, and they use social media, including TikTok, including doppelganger campaign, right? When they copy the legitimate media websites and spread some negative news, etc. So they needed to come up with some more innovative things. But in other regions, like in MENA region, in Africa, in Latin America, they are using their extremely powerful, I would say, conglomerate of RT and Sputnik media partnerships with different countries and outlets in those countries to share the content. So they are more present there. Plus, they're actively using their diplomatic diplomacy and their diplomats to go and provide comments and commentary on local media and providing Russian point of view quite efficiently and discuss in a way how Russia is doing right and everybody else doing wrong. And also they're on like in so-called global south, I do not like it, but they are using this specific thing that they are using anti-Western sentiment to make this about like West versus Russia, where Russia fights this anti-Western imperialism or something, when in reality, like for the Ukrainian specifically, this is extremely odd to read because this is an imperial war waged by Russia to consume Ukraine. It's just, it doesn't make it. It's not anti-imperial war. It is basically imperial war to actually conquer other nation. So so again, to conclude, they haven't switched. They work in simultaneously in multiple places, but they are using different techniques, and the ecosystem in multiple parts of the world differs, and that's what's the most important. And also messaging, right? Because the target audience is more is easily perceiving some specific messages rather than others, right? So for some parts of the world, like this denazification will work. For some others, is that because Ukraine wants war, again, this is the statement of Russians, there might be hunger in your country because there's like the grain export is stopped or something like this. So they're using and instrumentalizing disinformation for different regions and attaching and shaping them for specific target audiences.
Yeah, and Roman, so Russia is conducting all these operations, including the use of coordinated and authentic networks on social media platforms, exploiting regional grievance with the West, hacking, forging documents, among other tactics. Roman, I wonder if these tactics can still be improved by Russia, and that having the information that we have now, could we somehow advance Russia next techniques into this info war?
That's a great question. I still think that this is a constant game. It's like in digital security, right? You could install the best protection software you could ever imagine in the world, multiple like lines of defense or protection, but there is always would be a way to avoid this and crack this security. So here is the same. We could anticipate a lot of their attacks. We've seen a lot of the techniques, but the thing is that some of them will still work, or they would find a way to inject some new messages, right? So if we understand that like this doppelganger websites and they would stop working in some way, right? So people would understand that this is like forgery, you should not believe into this. So they will use something new. Like there was a few years back, there was a campaign like called Peace Data. You probably heard about this, when they hired real freelance journalists for like front operation media and published real articles. Those people never knew that they worked for Russians, but they were hired. So could have we anticipated it? maybe if we just like set for like red teaming and blue teaming and like think about it, but we probably could not be able to prevent it perfectly because again, you need to know, a lot of things in advance. It's like even if you have the most, sophisticated monitoring tool, there would be always something that you will not spot. Because simply it is impossible. Like the internet is so wide, a lot of things happening simultaneously. Some things might be so granular and so regional. Like literally, Russians send different disinformation campaigns in different Ukrainian cities, and like trying to wedge some like differences and like make people hostile towards other regions. Like they used blackouts, so when there was no electricity in Ukraine, and they just like in Lviv, they told that like all of your electricity goes to Odessa. They are partying and you do not have lights. And in Odessa, they've done the same, but they told that like the Lviv takes all of your electricity or something like it, or even more granular things. And it is impossible to see and anticipate everything because, again, it is too complex to do that. And potentially we could do, but what I'm saying, there is always something that we could omit and overlook, and Russians will try to exploit this. Yeah.
Roman, we need from you to share OSINT tools to search on TikTok, which is not the easiest platform to explore.
Yeah. So the hashtags is a great thing, but the problem with the hashtags is that a lot of people use them. So you need to go through a lot of videos. And I remember one of my colleagues who searched something on VK at some point, and there were like hashtags that he was interested in a long while back. And he said that like he's seen so many pictures of people nails after the manicure that before he found the information that he needed, it's like it was painful. So in TikTok, it would be somewhat the same, right? When you search a specific hashtag, there will be tons of content that would not be relevant. But when they use the popular hashtag, that's the thing, right? The people will click on it and like tap on it and will start to look through them. So maybe at least some 1 or 2 videos would be useful to do and take a look. Another thing is Google dorking technique. So basically you pick the like site tiktok.com and then search for the specific patterns like in bios, or you search for again maybe hashtags. I know, sort by relevancy, by date, and maybe it will give you a result. But unfortunately, there are some unofficial API things, but I'm not so sure that they're extremely effective, to be honest. I mean, they are in a way, but unfortunately, there is no like clear and a great tool that will solve all of your issues. I do not know about the scientific TikTok API access. I honestly I cannot comment on it because I've never tried it myself. Maybe it is efficient. So if you're in academia, please try it and tell us how it works. Would be happy to hear about your results and findings there, or to cooperate even.
Thank you. Please share. Okay, I believe we have time for 2 more questions if the answers are brief, Roman. So let's go for this one. Well, we already know that there are links. There are links to Doppelganger in the investigations, but could you give us a little bit more information, because it's relevant for you, DisinfoLab, and for our audience, I believe.
Yeah. I think it is somewhat connected to the doppelganger. Again, it's extremely hard to tell whether it's like the same people, or sitting in the same office. I kind of suspect that they might, honestly. But unfortunately, I do not have like a firm evidence on the hand, right, to tell you that. The only thing that we have in this campaign is that okay, we have the narrative, we have like who might be whose interest it serves. So, but this is like it's tangential, right? It's not like smoking gun evidence or something. So only thing that we have is that TikTok looked at their backend and said and told us, like BBC Verify mostly, they told, look, this is Russian operation that used OPSEC techniques, like the VPNs and some other things. So Russians are behind it. That's literally everything that we have. I believe it is connected because again, it is some impersonation used, but also how this thing is amplified on other social media, right? So there's somewhat similar patterns of spreading on X in particular. So there might be some connection to the doppelganger, but again, I want to give you better evidence of that, but unfortunately, I cannot.
Thank you, Roman. Really last question. To what extent do you think was AI-generated text used for this or other campaigns, given that detection of small text snippets is currently impossible?
That's a great question. It was definitely like AI narrated, but regarding the AI generation of text, it might be the use of the AI generated text, but I don't think that it was extremely necessary in this case. Again, we have like zero evidence. As you said, it is hard to understand on a small text, and I honestly never run this over the AI like text detector or something tool. So it might be, but especially because a lot of the texts were somewhat similar. So maybe what they've done is that they wrote a text and asked the tool to rewrite it multiple times. I could definitely see how it might have been happen. They might use the AI to translate text, that's for sure, to other languages. But I think there is a way to use this kind of things in operations for sure. And I guess this year we would see even more, but again, the problem would be with attribution. Like, how would you say whether this is an AI text or not, if it's like 2 sentences, or even if it's like slightly rewritten by a person, or rewritten by a few AI tools on top of each other? That's a good question. So if people who are working in AI text identification are watching us, that's a great thing to work on.
Thank you, Roman. I regret that the discussion is over because it's really interesting, but we are running out of time. So thank you very much for the presentation, for this investigation and others run by DFRLab, because at the end of the day, you are championing the cause of peace and sovereignty over Ukraine. So thank you also to the audience for your interest and for your questions. And before closing the webinar, I just wish to announce that we have a few new webinars coming in next week. On the 14th March, Guillaume Kuster from TechFest will disclose how the Finnish far right took the spotlight on social media ahead of the presidential elections. Then the following week, on 21st March, we will be hosting a webinar about Digital Service Act Coordinations 101 with Interface. And this webinar will be followed by a topic of great interest for researchers. DSA access to data will be discussed on the 11th of April with Silvia Mericio from DJ Connect. Before leaving, please just 30 seconds more. You will have access to a rating survey at the end of the webinar. In the survey also, you can suggest future topics to be covered by EU DisinfoLab webinars. Thank you again, Roman. Thank you to all the attendees. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.